Mike, and I think we're about to. Good morning, Graham Irvine. Sorry,
Good morning, Mike.
You rushed in and.
Oh my goodness me!
Sorry about that, and I turned the microphone on, and you.
Yeah, I looked, and there was 3.2 seconds.
Yeah,
I thought I better put my headphones on. So
plenty of time.
Yeah.
Just talking to Rachel, our social media expert, and I think we're Facebook Live. I think,
really?
I think she's about to press the button.
Is that right?
So
the button.
There's a button. Yep.
There's a button that says "Don't press this."
I think so. And the camera comes on.
Yeah. Okay.
So
we're in a whole lot of trouble, my friend.
Well, I'm okay because the camera's looking at you.
What? Right. Great.
So, if you're near your phone or your computer or your tablet or whatever,
stop that.
You'll be able to see how good-looking Graham is.
Stop that.
You're looking good this morning.
Yeah, thanks,
I'm
mate.
just paying you a compliment.
I appreciate that.
You're looking good.
Yeah.
Good weekend.
It was a great weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah. On all sorts of counts.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Surf?
Yeah. No. It's 9 metres out there.
Whoa, wow, that's pretty.
Yeah, I would have liked
isn't
to have got down to the southwest. I think that would have been interesting. Yeah.
So I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm here too.
Not surfing. Now, last Monday morning we were talking about sleep with
that's right.
Teenagers.
We did, and we talked about the fact that physiologically it's normal for teenagers to sleep quite a long time. Frustrating, but normal.
Yeah, so rest easy, mums and dads.
That's exactly right.
It's normal.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you still have to navigate that space, but yeah. Again, I think we said be careful of expectations. You know, yes, there will be some teenagers that will leap up at the crack of dawn, and there will be some that leap up at the crack of noon. So you have to sort of find the balance that works in your home with your teenagers. Yeah,
I did like what you said last Monday, also, Graham, about opening up and starting that conversation with some of those frustrations. Like if you find it frustrating, actually sit down and actually have a conversation about it.
That's it. Yeah, and it is about starting the conversation, and it's about recognising that none of us reach the benchmark at the first go.
Yeah.
You know, I remember somebody once saying to me, when you look at an Olympic champion in high jumps, probably the reason they're the Olympic champion is because they've knocked the bar off more often than anybody else.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's a good analogy.
And that's part of the safety net that teenagers need at home. I mean, that's true of all ages of our children, but particularly teenagers, because they're exploring the fact that says, who am I as an individual, not who am I as the son or daughter of my parents. That's essentially the quagmire that teenagers enter, to go, well, you know, am I different? Well, I am different, so how am I different? Yeah. And do I want to be different in this area? Do I want to do things differently in this area? And they're often the frustrations that we have as parents, because particularly those of us that are a little more controlling in our nature, you know, and do it my way, and my way's the right way type deal. We often forget that being a teenager is actually about pushing those boundaries, not because there's a sense of rebellion necessarily, but because it's about who am I? Do I keep what I've been given in my early years, or is there a different way of doing things? And if there's a different way, do I want to go down that road? And that's fundamentally where we are with teenagers. And so, you know, one of the things that we need to keep in mind as parents is, how do we want our teenager to, or what do we want our teenager to be like at the end of these few years?
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
And you know, one of the things that Gay and I really was our mantra, I guess, for our children as they came through their teen years was that, you know what, no matter what happens at the end of this period, we want to be in relationship with our kids.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that if parents of teenagers can remind themselves of that, that ultimately being in relationship with your child is more important than anything else. Now, you know, that doesn't mean that other things aren't important, but you know what? when your child is 20 and you're 40, let's say, you've still got another 30, 40 years of being in relationship with that individual. And that's really, really important. Yeah. And there are times when Gay and I had to say, what's more important? That our teenager do exactly what we want right when we want it, or that we're actually friends with them for the next 40 years.
Love it. Graham, we'll take a break. We'll come back and talk some more. My guest in the studio this morning is Graham Irvine from Riverview Church. We've been continuing this conversation about being a parent, but also particularly about teenagers. You're on 98.5. Back soon.
Are you planning a trip to France or interested in your children learning another language? Alliance France has the Perth run genuine French language classes for children.
On 98.5, this is Mornings with Mike, and Graham Irvine is with me. We've been chatting about teenagers over the last few Monday mornings.
We have, yes, those aliens that end up in our homes and go, where did this person come from?
And I don't know you.
That's right. Who are you? Yeah. What have you done with my daughter or son? Yes. Mike, I came across a really interesting little article a couple of years ago by talking about an English teacher in New York. And this English teacher had decided that what she needed to do was to engage the parents in the teenagers' homework. Okay. Now, as a primary school teacher, which I was, that was sort of my last teaching area, I realised often that parents were often engaged in doing their children's homework, but this wasn't the idea that the parents would do it for them. But what she did was she said, okay, we're looking at media and we're looking at how media tells stories. And she said, over the next 6 weeks, I want to the class, I want you to choose a TV program that you enjoy watching, but I want you to organise it so that you can watch it with your parents there.
Okay.
And then at the end of the program, I want you to have a discussion about the messages and the stories, both up front and behind the words that were coming out in the program. And as I read that, I thought, what a fantastic idea. One of the things Gay and I often talk about to parents is how well do you actually know your child?
Right. Okay. Great discussion.
So as a parent, could you name your child's 4 best friends?
Okay.
Do you know their top 2 music artists that they like to watch or listen to? Do you know if they read? Do you know their top author?
Yeah.
Do you know the genre of stories that they like to read? There's a whole lot of stuff that we sort of actually don't even touch on as parents, where, again, it's that we're so busy doing the parenting and making life happen every 24-hour period that we often don't take time to think about, how well do I know my son or daughter?
That makes you realise, Graham, as you're saying that's such then that age, that 12, 13, is really a critical age where things can potentially go pear-shaped.
Absolutely, yeah. And there have been many times over the years when I've spoken to parents when things have gone pear-shaped, and one of the common denominators has been, we just didn't know. Okay. And I think that we just doesn't know. That's great English, Graham.
And you used to be a
geography teacher. So I know where it is. I just can't pronounce it. So that's always my excuse.
That was quick.
Yeah. But yeah, so those that idea of doing something together, and then the parents asking some questions about, well, why do you like that? What interests you in that? Whatever it is, the sport, the music, the literature, the TV shows, the media, why does that interest you? And just listening. I think the old saying that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth and they should be used in that proportion is probably more important when parents deal with teenagers than at any other time in their whole parenting career. And yes, we mentioned last week that often teenagers are reluctant to talk, but sometimes they're reluctant to talk because we actually don't listen. So maybe what we need to do is we'll chat a little bit about some listening skills. But just, I'd like to challenge parents of teenagers this morning to ask that question. How well do I know my teen?
That's a great question. We'll take a break. We'll come back and talk some more. My guest in the studio this morning is, what's your name again? Graham.
Yeah, that's the one.
Back soon.
I could stay awake just to hear you breathing. Watch you smile while
Here on 98.5, this is Mornings with Mike and Graham. Irvine from Riverview is with me. We've been talking about teenagers. You mentioned earlier, Graham, about the importance of listening. Now, we hear it all the time, and we kind of know it, don't we? But it's not easy to put it into practice, is it? Like, we can read all the books and hear it. Oh, yeah, that's a great tip. Thanks for that.
Yeah,
but when it comes practically, it's really hard.
Yeah, it is.
As we know,
it is.
Our kids are growing up now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because you know, part of the process that we go through, of course, of being a parent is that for many years we're the boss, and it's really difficult to give up the boss.
Oh yeah, some of us like being the boss.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yes, that's right. Yeah, until my wife slaps me down and says, "Really?" Oh dear. But yeah, so really, no matter what personality type we are, as a parent, we often slip into a whole lot of not helpful habits because we think, well, we know what the answer to that is. But of course, the problem is that if we supply the answer every time, what are we growing our teenager into? Right? So it is part of that process of going, how can I help my teenager be a problem solver? Because ultimately, that's what you do in life.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, you now the problem doesn't necessarily, probably that's the wrong word, challenge. You know, every day brings something different where you actually have to make decisions.
That's right.
And so if all that we've done as a parent is given the answers, you know, given the solutions, then it's very difficult for teenagers to grow up with a skill set that allows them to look at a problem and say, okay, how can I solve this? So I think what we'll do next week is, I have mentioned this book before, but I want to talk a little bit out of a book called Parent Effectiveness Training. Now, it's been around for longer than I have, I think.
That's been around a long time.
Mate, I tell you, it is long. I first came across it when I was doing my teaching degree, so that was before. In fact, you used slates and pieces of chalk.
I was going to say,
yeah.
Was ink invented?
No,
of course not.
That's right. Yeah, chiseled on the rock. Yeah, Fred Flintstone and I. Yeah, no worries. But look, it's as I say, it's been revisited by the author, who's Dr. Thomas Gordon.
Okay.
But I've found it over the decades excellent. It is a really great book. Because it concentrates on the skill of listening. So I think we might talk a little bit about that. And it looks at some of the really easy habits we fall into that actually don't encourage listening. And, you know, yes, as parents, we are there to guide. But remember, in the teenage years, we've moved into this area of being the coach. So, yes, there are still aspects of our parenting where we're the boss. But, you know, even in both of those ways of parenting or seasons of parenting, listening is still so important. Yeah. You know, I know through my work career, the difference that it makes when you have somebody that's, you know, your boss or your upline manager who listens to you, even if they don't agree, you know, even if nothing changes, but at least you walk away going, oh, I actually felt that I was heard.
Yeah.
Compared to somebody that there's a blank wall and really they're thinking about their golf game or whatever. You know, it's like, okay, well, what's the point? Yeah. And I think that very often that's the message that we give our teenagers. Well, I don't want to hear what you have to say. I'll tell you how it's going to be, and that's as far as we go. But from a perspective of relationship, that's not a good way to deal with it. And from a perspective of giving our teenagers those skills of how can I solve this challenge, it's also not good. So let's talk a little bit about that over the next couple of weeks.
Okay, I've enjoyed listening to you this morning.
I'm sure you have.
It's been fantastic.
I noticed you didn't jump in there at all.
I was exercising
my listening.
What did I say? Sorry?
Yeah.
Who's on first?
Oh, my goodness.
You know
me.
what? We're out of time.
Yeah, I'm sure we are. Yeah.
We'll catch up next Monday.
You bet.
Have a great week.
Thanks, Mike.
My guest in the studio has been Graham Irvine. You're on 98.5.
98.5, your family no matter what.